Welcome back to Performance Starts Within. I'm joined today by a very special guest, and I feel it's very fitting that we are talking about this topic with this person. Today, I'm joined by Andrew, who's a podcast producer and founder and owner of Think Loud. He is the person that is helping us make this podcast happen. I feel it's fitting that I have you here as both a stand-in host, guest, co-host, because the topic we're talking about today is honoring the season that you're in. And I think we're going to cover a few topics specifically about this being second day in studio for me, first time launching a podcast, and there's a lot of things that kind of come up in that space. So I've asked Andrew to sit in with me today to take me on this journey to support this honoring the season, honoring being very new for me. So thank you so much for joining me on our podcast.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Very fitting. Very fitting. We've been having a lot of discussions in between recordings. Day one, day two, you have made tremendous progress from the first time you came in a few weeks ago all the way until now, which is twice. So when I say all the way, I mean day one and day two. I think this is very fitting because, and I'll let you kind of expand on this topic, but, starting the podcast journey and being a podcaster and starting anything new, one can be daunting, but two can be hard because you kind of want things to move quicker than they naturally will. Especially when we look at podcasters, we like to quickly go, Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, your favorite podcaster who's got millions and millions of downloads and, speaks incredibly well and who seems to nail it and all of this kind of stuff, and kind of go, why am I not there yet? And starting this is you kind of got to accept where you're at. And I think and I don't say this just because you're here in front of me and I want to fluff you up, but you've done really, really well. You have navigated the process really well. You've been open to feedback. You have improved every time and you have taken imperfect action, which is something that I think we're going to unpack here today. Taking imperfect action and gone against your natural tendencies, which can be to, many, many, many ideas, lots of thinking and struggling to execute. And so well done to you. I want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
But why don't you start by explaining, what this is all about and why this is important for you to talk about?
I think it's important mainly because I, like many people, get stuck in that perfection. You have this dream where this podcast is a dream, something I've always wanted to do for a long time. And along the way, you don't realize the mindset blocks that get in the way. Perfectionism, fear of being seen, not knowing what to talk about, will people listen? And so one of the topics that I had written down was specifically about honoring the season you're in and honoring the fact that we are learning. We're not going to be Diary of a CEO standard from day one, as much as I would love that to be in the perfectionist dream. And so I'm noticing in this journey over the last couple of weeks that we've been recording together, playing with different ways in which I want to be a podcaster. We've tried things like we've tried guest interviews. We've had a couple of guests on, which has been fabulous. And we've noticed some really good things there. We've noticed in solo episodes, scripting, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
We've come back and had you on last week as well, just kind of some Q&As. And what I'm noticing in myself is that I feel really good and comfortable in that safety piece when I'm having a back and forth conversation in the season where I am as a podcaster. Maybe in a year's time, I may be able to jump on a solo episode and script it and speak to camera in a way that is highly polished. But for where we are now, looking at where the skills are, I would not be doing it justice for the podcast from the start if I jumped straight into scripting, knowing how disjointed it would be. So using the strengths a little bit in that season.
So many good points there. And obviously owning a podcasting agency, I geek out on the podcasting world and I get to see so many different people and how they approach things. And, I'm not going to go down any rabbit holes with that, but I think to highlight, what you said is trying different things and going what works well for me, and tying it back to, honoring the season that you're in. knowing where your strengths are right now, knowing that your strengths will change over time, and being like, this is good. And so we've jumped on here because, this is where you feel comfortable. This is where I think we're going to get some absolute gold today. And I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too. And I think it's really important to note that, so many people go through this, right?
Mm.
But what sets people apart is whether or not they do something about it. And so for me, I could sit there and ruminate and think about, how do I make these scripts perfect, which then may stop me actually jumping on and trialing and speaking. And I'm a big believer in doing will always get you further than trying to think about it.
Yeah. 100%. And also, if you were to start off by doing scripting, you may quickly form a negative relationship with podcasting or with camera work, because you go, we tried it before, it felt disjointed, it didn't feel natural. And when you compare that to how you've done interviews for you, and you said this, like you much prefer to do that. And so you've got this one way of doing it that you didn't enjoy, that didn't feel comfortable, that didn't feel authentic, that didn't feel you. There was kind of like, but you know what it's like to be in a comfortable position in having these types of conversation. And so you're now leaning into what you enjoy, what you love. And that's obviously going to be really important for consistency as well in actually maintaining this, because it's, why would you continue to do something that you just don't enjoy? I know a lot of people do it. I've done it many times in my life. I'm sure you've done it as well. But finding passion and enjoyment in it is really important.
Yeah, and honoring the goal, like the big vision of what this is going to become.
Yeah.
And part of this is a step into speaking. Part of this is a step into having some really, really good conversations and penny drop moments that people can take away. And I feel like from those experiments over the last couple of weeks in some of these episodes, starting with scripting has been great for intros. That's fine. For outros. But at the moment in this season, I think having that from the start doesn't bring that personality and that kind of approach that I want in the way that I speak. So it's been an interesting experience. And I think that's why having you on to continue, those lessons and ripping the Band-Aid off constantly just makes it that little bit easier every time. And honoring the fact that that's what we need to do right now until we get to a point of safety, security, and comfort in where we're at.
Love that. So we've got a series of questions here. And I'm going to let you take the mic, and I'm just going to be facilitator, is the word that we agreed on today. And so let's kick off. What do you say to yourself when it feels like you're already behind before you've even started? That's a good one. Unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. What do you say to yourself when it feels like you're already behind before you've even started? It's a hard one because I'm still in that with a lot of things. Like sometimes I feel on a daily I'm behind because I'm so focused on that big, big place I want to be.
Yep.
And so I often have to remind myself and sit and look at what I've got and appreciate where I've gone from the last year, essentially, one in family life and business, to be able to move forward and be grateful for it. And so generally what I try and do is actually a list of, it helps you bring you to ground, but listing out all the things that you've actually done over the last year rather than keep looking forward, and just a constant reminder. So I don't know if it was something that I would kind of say to myself, like a affirmation or anything like that. It's more of I get to a point where I'm craving for more and not sitting in the middle. We're constantly living in the middle. Like we spoke about this before. It's just reminding us that there's never an end. And that's the best part about talking about this, right? It's like the season we're in is the middle, and I'll always be in the middle somewhere because the goalpost generally moves a little bit more. You'll never be at the finish line.
Good point. So can pushing too hard in the wrong season actually slow progress more than resting would?
Yeah, so if you imagine an athlete in this circumstance, an athlete can't sustain a sprint for like forever. So pushing too hard will naturally turn into an injury of some kind, or it'll get to a point of full exhaustion where they actually don't enjoy what they're doing. And so naturally people will quit if they're going too far. So uninspired, stagnant injury being one of them would be a reason why pushing too hard isn't the right way. But it's also in a way that it's going to go in the wrong direction if you are pushing so hard and you have your blinkers off. So if you're not conscious of where you're at and taking rest, taking time to recalibrate, taking rest to ground and reflect on where you're at, you might also find that you've taken the wrong path for much further and much longer than what you probably needed to if you simply just kind of rested. So I think, especially with this podcast, if I stuck to what I thought I should do and just script and just try and get out scripts and teleprompts, because that's what they talk about, is making sure you're really structured. And I know that I don't sound myself in my episodes. I may have scripted and recorded 20 episodes. I could simply do 20 episodes from a teleprompter, but would that be me? Not necessarily. And I probably, one, would use them and then I wouldn't have any audience that would actually enjoy the experience, or it would be a podcast that doesn't actually show who I am and what I'm trying to do. So I think having and listening to what is it that we need in where we're at and honoring that in the pushing and the not pushing is really important as well.
Mm. So if you had, say, a client or someone you were working with or someone who was getting your advice, and say they were at 10K a month and they were kind of, pushing hard, and their goal was maybe to double, get to that 20K a month. But they were exhausted. They were like, I'm trying everything, nothing's working. What would you say to them?
This was me like 2 years ago, which is really interesting. Because single mum, doing it all on my own, working, and I couldn't push that 10K due to exhaustion, right? And what I needed to hear is very different to actually what I thought I needed as well. Because what I needed was rest, but I didn't have the systems built to have rest. I felt like I had to do everything in the business. I had to show up every day and I had to hustle and push harder. I thought that's just it was just that season I thought I was in. But really, what I needed is probably to someone have a really good look at my business and go, here's where you need to spend your energy in this particular season where you're in kind of overwhelm or you're unable to see that next stage. And it's interesting because I had a conversation with my business coach back then, and I changed my business and reduced to 3 days, and I doubled my revenue by doing less. I was a bit more intentional with my time and took more rest. So I was still doing the same things, but intentionally in 3 days. And I also outsourced and got a VA and health support as well. And automatically, I didn't even know that I doubled my revenue until I did my profit and loss that month.
Can you recall what it was that you were doing when you were struggling, and then what you shifted your focus to that helped you double?
Because I was stuck in that hustle cycle, I wasn't making decisions that were strategic and intentional. I was emotional. I was operating at 50% anyway. So I could have worked 5 days a week working at 50%, or I worked 3 days a week working at 100%. So the big shift was essentially I needed to pull back the reins in because, one, I was just exhausted and needed some space. And it was more in hindsight more than anything. Sitting with a new mindset coach did definitely help, shifting through some of the beliefs around what success is, and having a bit of gratitude for the season I'm in, that the season I was in was with a brand new baby and building a business at the same time. And so naturally my season or my type of business will take a bit longer, rather than someone that is, single, doing it on their own, has all the time in the world. They may progress a lot quicker purely because they don't have all the other things kind of bogging them down a little bit.
Yeah. What helps you focus on your chapter and your life, where you're currently at, instead of everyone else's?
It's really hard. It really is. And sometimes it's turning everything off. It's not spending so much time on socials looking at everybody else, doing a bit of a cull of all the things that I'm following. So culling all the things that make me feel inadequate in what I'm doing. So if I'm following someone on socials and I start to look at them and go, oh, I'm just not feeling good. So it's a bit of a feeling. I will unfollow them because it's not supporting the journey I'm on. Pulling the reins in the type of feedback I get as well, and being intentional with the coaches that I surround myself with, making sure they have a purpose. And I'm not just bringing in noise that is going to disempower me with what I'm doing as well. So it takes a lot of boundary to get to that point. And often it's just to tell no one what you're doing. So there's very, very few people that I told that I'm launching a podcast. Told one person in my family purely because I don't want people to know, because I don't want to be convinced out of it.
So you've written here, if you're burning out at chapter 0, how will you possibly sustain yourself at chapter 50? Unpack that for me.
I think foundationally is really important to get everything from the start. And so this time in business, I have a VA from day one. So before I even was bringing in revenue, I made a conscious effort to budget into the start of the business the things that will move me in a more foundational, structured way, so that if leads come flooding in, or when, not if, when, I already have that set up. And so I think going into things with making sure that you are supported in ground zero, in day one, with lots of things. You, for example, supported because I'm in studio, compared to if I didn't record my podcast in studio and I was at home, may not have had that support, right? So that I can get to bigger numbers and where I want to go without burning out and falling off the perch and quitting and finding it hard and not having someone to, cheer for you as well in those spaces, which sometimes is actually important to help you get going. Because I could start a podcast on my own if I wanted to. I've tried 10 million times to, plan, put it all together, but to actually get things going, you do need some people around you that kind of support the vision, and being selective on who that is to help you so you don't burn out.
Yeah. Talking avoidance, talking maybe a little bit of perfectionism, procrastination. Is overworking sometimes just another form of avoidance?
100%. I think doing too many of the things that only light us up can be an act of avoidance. So I love writing. I love planning. I love doing all those sort of things. If I stuck just in that lane, I would not get anything done. You can't make money from planning and just writing. Like, you can make money from writing, but if you're not pitching that to somebody, so you're avoiding that lead generation or that pipeline, of course it's a bit of a, I don't want to say excuse, but it is you hiding from that. And sometimes it's unconscious as well. I used to overwork all the time, like typically overworked, because I was avoiding something, avoiding going home, avoiding relationships, avoiding certain jobs you had to do, avoid cleaning your house, like all the time. We're always avoiding something. Yeah.
Nice. What happens to performance when avoidance becomes the default coping strategy?
It's an interesting one. I've experienced this recently in my day job with sales, because when we're overworked and overwhelmed, we often will drop into avoidance, like procrastination, which is kind of like a form of avoidance, right? And a lot of the time I see it from, if they're uninspired, stagnant, or overworked, essentially, it means they're not going to do the things that they need to do to get the results that they need to get. So in sales, if you avoid taking inquiry, if you avoid following people up, if you avoid doing the minimum things to get them to convert, then it's going to make a big impact on your income coming in, your profit, your clients, and the pipeline eventually will just be empty. And so I've been through this cycle myself in my business before, where when I was overworked and overwhelmed at that 10K month mark, the reason I wasn't going further is because my pipeline kept emptying, and I was in this vicious cycle of feast or famine, where I needed a day off because I'm so exhausted. So I take time off from doing the things that don't inspire me because I was just kind of paddling above water with all the good things in the business and not doing all the things that actually move the needle, which were the ones that were a bit draining. And so 6 weeks later, you'd have nothing in your pipeline, no income coming in. So you would then go back out and work really hard. And that's where that distraction comes in from overworking. You're distracting yourself and you're stuck in that stress cycle. So it's definitely going to be very detrimental to the business if you're in that, for sure.
How to push back on pressure that ignores your capacity?
That one's a trap as well. I'm learning that one is a big trap.
I'm just trying to understand it.
So a couple of ways to see that one is almost like that concept about resilience. Resilience being that we all think that it's doing more and just kind of suck it up and get on with it, right? And so if you've got people around you who are asking you to just keep going, do more, get back on the horse, you've got this, it will continue in that cycle of burnout and overwhelm, and they don't know your capacity, you know your capacity. Where I find that it's really hard is often we get stuck in safety and we think we know our capacity, but we sometimes have capacity for more. And so the pushback needs to be in a way that's supportive and healthy. And so a conversation I know you and I had before was around safety in other parts of your world as well as business. And so for me, as I'm going more into podcasting and business and speaking, all those elements are quite new. And so naturally, you're going to feel quite uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're a little bit exposed, lack of safety. And so for me to be able to do those things, it's like rock climbing away from the wall. Until I can get my belay onto the next hook and feel safe and confident where I am, I still need a bit of safety somewhere else. And we tend to dip back into that. And so that's where that capacity is, right? So you kind of need to surround yourself with people that help build that safety for you in other spaces so that you have that confidence to do that in business. Otherwise, if you feel unsafe in everything, of course, your foundations are going to collapse around you because you're just in all sorts of discomfort. And I think that's really important to know that what that capacity is and where your capacity is to stretch and see, can you stretch more in a way that's healthy? And your coaches will know. If you've got a coach, they'll know what your capacity is. But also knowing that if you stretch too far, you may end up well behind what you started.
Fall off the rock face.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were going to give the audience 3 key things to walk away from this conversation having learned, what would they be?
That bring in some resource to help support you in that season. Understanding that it's not going to be perfect from day one. So what can you do resource-wise to help you moving forward to where you are? That would be the first one. So for me, introducing you into our podcast as a sit-in host is part of my bringing in resource. Number 2 is to find and see if you can find what your capacity is and where your stretch is. And that might be like a visual thing more than anything, where you can have a circle of what's safe for you in different spaces. And if one part, I imagine it like a solar flare, you know how the solar flares go out? When there's a solar flare going out, what's keeping you safe in the other parts to help support you, not take you away from it, to bring you back though. So making sure you've got a really good network of people around you that help support you and keep you safe in other spaces so that you can take big leaps in other places. And then the third one is sometimes the circle needs to be ironed out and rebuilt. So for me, in my circle, I've got some people that are great in safety, but sometimes they're detrimental to the cause that I'm trying to do. So it can get quite lonely in that middle place. And so go and join a mastermind of some capacity, go network with some groups, jump on a podcast with somebody, meet people, because then you can start bridging that gap between the people you know now that might be starting to move away from what you're doing. And you can start moving towards the people that you want to be around or in that next level and bridge the gap in the middle with those people.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Great takeaways.
Thank you for sitting in and substituting as a co-host today as I embark on this podcast journey.
You're welcome. Until the next one.
Yes, I'll pop your link in the show notes for you.
Perfect.